Hello and welcome to Teach Me in 10. Today we're speaking with Dexter Lutsili, a scientific marketing executive at Shimadzu and founder of the Student Pharmacologist Network. Dexter was recently recognized with the Kirsty Smitten Award at the ELRIG Drug Discovery event. And in this conversation, we'll explore his journey in the life sciences space, the work and impact that led to his recognition, and the broader mission behind his initiatives to support and connect emerging scientists. Hi, Dexter. Firstly, congratulations on the award, and thank you again for joining us to talk about your experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, firstly, for viewers who may not know it, what is the Kirsty Smitten Award and what does it recognise?
Yeah, so the Kirsty Smitten Award is essentially an award that was presented by ELRIG that recognizes the impact made by early career professionals within sort of drug discovery and the life sciences. I believe before it was called the ECP Impact Award. However, it was named in honor of Dr. Kirsty Smitten, who passed in 2023. So she was a British chemist and she was involved in drug discovery research, which focused a lot on, tackling antimicrobial resistance. However, she unfortunately was diagnosed with a rare form of heart cancer, which led to her passing away at the age of 29 in 2023. However, during her treatment, she was still, advocating for the advancement of, cancer research, as well as, bringing advocacy towards cancer treatment, also giving like patient voices. So that's just a little bit about the award essentially. So it definitely, it being named after someone like that, it's such an honor to have been awarded that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the project or contribution that won you this award, and how would you explain it in simple terms?
I think the most simplest way, because I think it's kind of two things, would be student advocacy. So I found the student pharmacology and drug discovery at the University of East Anglia. And essentially during my course, I kind of realized that there wasn't a lot of information available out there. And it was quite hard to kind of like figure out where I would take this, £60,000 worth of debt degree. So during my final year, I started two initiatives. The first one was a national student network of pharmacology students, the first one in the UK. And the whole kind of like consensus of that was to bring us all together. Because a lot of times pharmacology students, they tend to feel as if, no one really understands what they're going through. A lot of universities focus a lot more on pharmacy or like larger courses. We're typically quite smaller in niche. So a lot of times we don't even realize that there's other pharmacology students outside of our universities. So it was kind of a way of bringing them together and kind of collecting different knowledge pools together so that we can kind of like just help each other and support each other. If I know an internship is going on in, I don't know, regulatory affairs, I want to put it in the group chat so that somebody else who's interested in that can also apply for that. So it's just a way of kind of sharing information, and it kind of grew into then creating the opportunities that were lacking within the space. And the second thing was also a digital marketing kind of social media Gen Z agency called Bros in Pharma that I did with some of my course mates, Karim and Ade. And essentially this kind of focused on us going to different life science conferences and events and doing end-to-end video production, audience engagement, interviews, Vox Pop videos that are more so designed to my generation, early, students, early career scientists, and professionals. But as first generation sort of like scientists or professionals in this industry, we realized it was important for students, early career professionals to be at these places. And we realized that a lot of the times they didn't even know that these things were happening. So a lot of it was also kind of humanizing these events and kind of showcasing that, hey, you can come here, everybody's super friendly, everybody's willing to help. All you have to do is basically just like turn up. So I would say those are kind of like the two projects that I was involved in that allowed me to be honored with this award. And it was just kind of like student advocacy and recognizing the struggles that students face and trying to not just be the one complaining about what's happening, but trying to create something that fixes the problem rather than just kind of like, speaks around it.
Absolutely brilliant initiatives. But I mean, you spoke a little bit about it there, but what specific problem were you trying to solve, and why is it important for drug discovery or life sciences right now?
I feel like for me, the specific issue I was trying to solve was a feeling of certainty. I think a lot of life science courses, students typically feel uncertain about where they're going to end up because it's quite a broad sector. There's so many different things that you can do. And even now as a graduate, and somebody who's in his, first role after graduation, I'm still surprised at how many options of job possibilities there are there. If you look at things like, pharmacy, if you look at things like medicine, they have quite a set in stone career pathway. You do this degree, you're going to end up a doctor. You do this degree, you're going to end up being a pharmacist. But what I realized sort of leading up to my, it was my second and my third year of university, is that I still don't know what I want to do. not only that, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. I feel as if like my university has helped, but there's not a lot. There's a few like pieces of information that I feel I'm missing in what I'm kind of like being told. And I think when you've spent, almost 3 years in a degree, when you're in thousands and thousands of pounds of debt in a degree, and you are kind of approaching the end of it and you are thinking, what's next? What do I do? It can be quite a scary feeling. So that's essentially what I wanted to kind of like solve, to give people more certainty in their decision in studying a life science degree like pharmacology, more certainty that, more awareness to the roles that are available, as well as more confidence in applying for these roles and knowing the pathways to get there. Because ultimately, what I would also hear is, because of people's uncertainty, a lot of people wanted to leave sciences and go into other sectors like tech. And I feel as if like, the reason why I fell in love with life sciences and drug discovery and pharmacology was because I knew the sort of wider impact that science has on society, science has on patients, science has on the progression of like mankind. So I think, to me, as kind of a bit of a science nerd, I felt a bit sad that people wanted to walk away, because I thought that this was just the most coolest thing in the whole wide world. So the fact that like I kind of saw people lose that little spark just because of something that to me felt like such an easy fix that hadn't necessarily been done, that's what I kind of wanted to provide an answer for.
That's great. Yeah, I think that feeling of uncertainty is felt across the country in grad.
Yeah, definitely.
So what was the key breakthrough or moment in your work that made you realize you were onto something valuable?
I feel like the first one was, so just a little bit about how I actually started. So I had just finished, the British Pharmacology Society's Pharmacology 2024 conference, where I kind of saw a few more pharmacology students, and I kind of had this idea of like getting us all together in a group chat. And that's literally, yeah, I just went on LinkedIn and I was kind of messaging everybody I could that said pharmacology undergrad or pharmacology master's student, pharmacology PhD, just anybody that was a student studying pharmacology, telling them how I feel, the sort of limitations I've noticed, and how I want us all to kind of band together. And within the first 3 days, we had about 100 people sign up. And, my course at my university had about 20 people in my year group, maybe a little bit less than that. So kind of like seeing 100 people from different universities, coming in within the first 3 days alone was kind of like there was actually a need for this. And the next kind of milestone happened literally the day after we hit that 100 sort of member mark, where we got reached out by an organization called Reunite, and they do STEM career training for students and graduates, and they kind of, help you understand what you can do with your STEM degree. They help you understand how to sort of apply for jobs, how to, be great at the interview process, etc. And their spaces typically are £500 per head. So they had seen the activity that we had doing, because I told people, go make as much noise as you can about this network forming. And it must have ended up on their founder Jen's page. And as a result of that, she reached out to me and she was like, hey, like, I've seen the work that you guys are doing. It resonates a lot with, what I'm doing with my own network. I would absolutely love to, help you guys. And I would love to give you 9 spaces to my academy. So that was about £4,500 worth of scholarships that, my members could have access to free of charge. And I was one of the people that was in that cohort last year, and kind of like just seeing a lot of the faces that were there. We had to do an application process that I had to run myself, and reading some of the reasons why people wanted to study life sciences, I just kind of like realized, again, I can see that passion that I also felt. I can see that kind of like hunger and that drive, as well as that confusion and uncertainty of how you're going to kind of like maximize the most of what you're doing, if that makes sense.
That's so great. And I bet it must be so rewarding seeing how it's benefiting others. So what kind of impact has this network had so far on your team or wider scientific community?
So I can definitely see that there's a lot of conversations that are happening within the network. I think what I kind of describe sort of like other life science students is I always say that we're each other's future co-workers. And a lot of times we kind of, science is a very collaborative field. And I think building those connections early on with, as I said, your future co-workers is something that I think is very valuable. So I've seen that there's a lot of, there's an increased sense of community within kind of like pharmacology students. A lot of people recognize each other when they go to the events. They're like, oh, I see your name in the group chat. And you can kind of just get that sense of community that I think was missing beforehand. Again, another thing that I'm kind of almost, grateful for as well that I was able to do is that because I have a team of, 10 people that kind of like help me with the project, project, and I have leaders within that team as well. Somebody that I graduated with last year as well was able to list the experience and what she kind of does with the network, and the help that she provides on her CV. And she's spoken to me about how that's kind of like been a conversation topic whenever she applies for roles, and when she's at interviews, because it shows a lot of the proactivity and a lot of the skills that a lot of students tend to not see on like student CVs or graduate CVs. And she was able to land a job that she really wanted to within the pharmaceutical industry. So again, that's something that I'm very proud of. That's something that I started off just on a whim has been able to kind of like be a small part in somebody's journey in, advancing within the pharmaceutical industry. And I think, again, so it comes back to that certainty, it comes back to exposing students to the type of professionals. We have a mentorship scheme as well that's helping people understand more niche areas, but it's also then the confidence to apply for certain roles or, reach for certain opportunities and know how to do it.
That's brilliant. So let's talk about what's next. How do you want to build on this, and what are you most excited about in the next 12 months?
Yeah. That's kind of like the big one. It's so weird because I've always been somebody that I plan in 6-month blocks. So, doing this has made me kind of like think more long term. And I think there's a few other similar networks that, like Black Pharma, which, operate on similar bases to what we do. And I see a lot of the things and activities that they do, such as like in-person events. That's just something that I think because of time, I've not been able to properly think about. So I think, we've brought the community closer together, digitally. Now I want to translate that to solidifying a lot of these bonds in person and, having, more so like in-person events. That's kind of like the next thing that I want to do. We started doing lab tours as well. We had a lab tour at Charles River in April. We had a lab tour in Glasgow in January, and then we have another one coming up in Cardiff. So I want to do more of that. I want to provide more opportunities, more sort of like contact points for students, to go to these different places and kind of just see what's available out there, speak to the different type of people in positions that they may have not known existed, just to kind of give them more informed choices into like what they want to do. So that's a little bit of, a little snippet of what I want to kind of like do within the next kind of like year or so.
Well, you've done such amazing work already, Dexter, and it sounds like you're going to be really busy for the next 12 months. Best of luck
Yeah,
with continuing this strong trajectory you're on, and thanks so much for sharing
thank
your
you so
insights
much.
with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to Dexter for joining us and sharing his story and insights. ELRIG is a not-for-profit organisation built on the idea of community, offering open access and free-to-attend events for global life science and drug discovery industries. Be sure to look up their next event, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.